You are standing in the canned meat aisle holding a can that costs almost $16. It is Keystone. 5-year shelf life, meat and salt, nothing else. It works. But here is what nobody tells you. The process that makes that can last 5 years is not a secret formula. It is just canning. A dozen cheaper cans around it are quietly doing the same thing. Number 1 on this list does almost exactly what Keystone does, for less than half the price, and almost nobody stocks it. This is not a video about Keystone being bad. It proves something real. The process works. The question is, which cheap cans actually deliver usable protein, and which ones are mostly water and filler wearing a meat label? These 14 foods are not all the same category, and they do not fail in the same way. Some of them you already own. By the end, you will not shop the meat aisle the same way again. Number 14. Canned sardines. Most carts roll right past the small flat cans without slowing down. They look like the cheapest thing in the whole aisle, and they are. That is exactly why people underestimate them. A can of sardines can cost a fraction of a single serving of Keystone beef, and it comes with something almost every other canned meat leaves out: edible bones. Most shoppers pick around them or skip the can entirely, missing that those bones are a real calcium source. Most canned protein does not include at any price. Here is the quiet mistake. A family spends real money on serious proteins and skips the $1 can that would have quietly covered a nutrition gap the expensive stuff never touched. Watch the sardine shelf during storm prep spikes. It is usually the first thing to thin out, because it is the cheapest can in the row. The move here is simple. No urgency, no stockpiling frenzy. Just add a few cans on a normal trip. The least impressive can on this list might be the most complete one per dollar you will find all day. If the cheapest can in the store can quietly outperform expectations like that, do not assume the next one is any less surprising. Number 13. Canned tuna. Almost every pantry in America already has tuna in it. That is not the surprise. The surprise is that most people have never actually checked whether the version they are buying is the one that holds up in storage. Plain chunk light in water, the boring can nobody photographs, quietly matches long-term canned meat stability. The foil pouch sitting next to it, the one that looks newer and more premium, often has a shorter real storage window, even though it looks like the upgrade. People assume newer packaging means better shelf life. It usually means the opposite. A pantry full of pouches ends up needing rotation twice as often as the shopper assumed, which means twice the checking and twice the chance something gets thrown out instead of eaten. Format matters more than most people think. Buy the plain can, not the upgraded pouch, if long storage is actually the goal here. And if something this basic and this cheap can quietly outstore a fancier product, wait until you see what a snack food is capable of. Number 12. Vienna sausages. Everybody jokes about the little can. Nobody stocks it seriously, and that is the actual mistake, because this might be one of the only canned meats on a shelf that a tired adult or a cranky kid will eat without a fight. A pantry that nobody wants to eat from is not a pantry. It is a museum. Households load up on serious proteins and skip the morale food, and 3 nights into a rough week, everyone is eating plain rice again because none of the serious cans feel appealing anymore. A case of these small cans costs less than a single large Keystone can, and everyone is a complete no-prep serving. Watch the multipacks. They vanish fastest right before school breaks and storm warnings, which tells you something. People who already know the trick are grabbing them quietly, while everyone else is still deciding what real food to buy. Keep a few cases specifically as morale stock, separate from your main protein. Comfort food is what keeps people eating from storage instead of giving up on it. That solves one problem. The next item solves a completely different one. What happens when there is nothing to actually spread it on? Number 11. Potted meat. This is the cheapest can in the entire meat aisle, sitting a few feet from items that cost 5 times as much. And that price gap is exactly where the trap is hiding. Cheapest is not the same as most protein. Several of these small cans are needed just to match the usable protein sitting inside one mid-size Keystone-style can, even though the sticker price on the potted meat looks dramatically lower every single time. Most shoppers assume canned meat means roughly equal nutrition can to can. It does not. A pantry can end up heavy on spreadable filler and light on real protein exactly when a full meal is what the household actually needs. This is the item that never runs short, because most shoppers already discount it before they even pick it up. Keep a few as spread, as filler, as a quick sandwich base. Never let it become the household's primary protein plan. So far, everything on this list has been about protein in some form. The next one shifts the whole conversation toward fat, and toward versatility most people never give it credit for. Number 10. Canned chicken. This is the can most people already trust, and the one almost nobody has actually checked the drained weight on. A 12.5-ounce can be roughly half water by weight, which means shoppers are paying can-size prices for a real protein amount that is quietly smaller than it looks. A six-pack of name-brand canned chicken runs somewhere around $13 to $15, and a meaningful chunk of that weight pours straight down the drain the moment the can is opened. You are buying water at meat prices. The label emphasizes premium and chunk. It does not emphasize drained weight, which is the number that actually matters when you are comparing value against a no-water-added product like Keystone. A recipe calling for a full can of chicken can come up noticeably short once the liquid is gone. Even a trusted popular brand can hide a format trap if nobody checks the fine print. Compare drained weight, not can size, before deciding this is the better deal. If a lean, trusted product can hide a trap like that, the next item proves that fat, not leanness, is sometimes the smarter buy in the whole aisle. Number 9. Spam. Everyone recognizes this can on sight. Almost everyone treats it as a joke. And yet, it is exactly the kind of can that quietly empties off real shelves during real shortages, while the healthier lean meats sit untouched. Households skip it chasing leaner options, then run short on cooking fat and slow-burning calories during a long stretch when that fat is exactly what the body and the meal both need. A single can carries enough rendered fat to season an entire pan of rice, beans, or vegetables that would otherwise taste flat coming out of storage. The can people mock is the one that quietly makes the rest of the pantry taste like actual food. It tends to move fastest in regions with a real history of storm prep, because locals there already learned this the hard way. A no-water-added, dense canned pork product is structurally closer to what Keystone charges far more for than most people realize. Keep it as a flavor and fat multiplier, not a standalone meal. Fat solves flavor. The next item solves a season. Most people completely forget to plan around. Number 8. Canned turkey. Shelves quietly restock this one around the holidays, and just as quietly forget it exists the rest of the year. Nobody is thinking about canned turkey in July, which is exactly why July is the smart time to buy it. This is one of the only canned meats whose availability is tied to a calendar date instead of a shortage pattern. On its own, it is dry. Without a fat source or a sauce partner nearby, it becomes a can nobody wants to open. It sits in the back of the pantry for months, technically stored, practically useless. Watch the post-holiday clearance shelves. Prices on this one often drop right after the season ends, which is the opposite of when most shoppers think to look for it. Pair it with the Spam or the canned bacon already sitting on your shelf, and a dry can turns into a real meal instead of a forgotten one. Turkey needs a partner. The next item is the classic partner meat that built entire ration systems long before prepper was even a word. Number 7. Corned beef. This can has outlasted actual wars. It was standard ration food before stockpiling had a hashtag attached to it. Most shoppers assume it is old-fashioned, something from their grandparents' pantry, and reach past it for a newer branded meat instead, completely missing that its formula has barely changed because it already worked the first time. Corned beef has been a standard shelf-stable ration meat for over a century, long before modern emergency food branding turned this into a marketing category. A decades-proven track record is a stronger shelf-life signal than any 5-year guarantee printed fresh on a label, and yet it sits one shelf over from the trendy branded can, priced lower, while shoppers walk right past it for the name they recognize. Watch it for price movement tied to overall beef costs, since it tracks general beef pressure closely. Treat it as a baseline beef stock and rotate it like anything else in the pantry. A can of beef on its own is useful. The next item takes that same beef and turns it into an actual finished meal, no extra thinking required. Number 6. Corned beef hash. A pantry can be stacked with separate cans of meat, starch, and vegetables that never actually become dinner without real effort. This can skips that step entirely. It looks like a niche breakfast item. It is actually a complete dinner solution, hiding in the wrong aisle of your own mental grocery list. Households stock protein and starch separately, and forget the one can that combines both, right on the exact night when cooking energy is at zero. One can functions as a full skillet meal, cutting the number of separate pantry items needed for dinner from 3 or 4 down to 1. 1 can, 1 skillet, 1 meal. No assembly required. It gets pulled fastest during power outage-prone seasons, when a one-pan meal suddenly matters more than anything technically nutritious sitting untouched in the cupboard. On a genuinely hard day, easy to make beats technically healthy every time. Keep a few of these specifically as low-effort meal cans. Separate from your raw building block protein. That solves one bad night. The next item solves an entire week of bad nights at once. Number 5. Canned chili. This is the can that turns 3 boring staples into 3 completely different dinners. Plain rice becomes 1 meal. Plain bread becomes another. Plain pasta becomes a third. Same can. 3 outcomes, 0 extra shopping. Households buy plenty of plain protein and consistently underbuy the flavorful bases that make repeated pantry meals bearable night after night. 1 can of meat-based chili can be split across multiple meals. Over rice one night, over a baked potato the next, mixed straight into pasta after that. 1 can, 3 completely different dinners, and nobody in the house feels like they are eating the same thing twice. Most people treat this as a single dinner in a can instead of what it actually is, a flexible base ingredient. Watch the store-brand versions specifically. They disappear before the name-brand cans do, because the people who already know this trick are quietly buying the better value first. Variety is a storage strategy, not a luxury. Flavor is what keeps people actually eating from the pantry instead of giving up on it. The next item is already pre-seasoned and ready to drop straight into any of these meals with 0 extra work. Number 4. Canned meatballs. Fully cooked, already seasoned, ready to drop into pasta sauce or a sandwich in under 2 minutes. Most shoppers default to plain canned beef or chicken and completely miss that pre-seasoned protein saves both cooking time and a missing spice problem during a genuinely stressful stretch. A single can turns a jar of plain sauce or a pot of plain rice into a finished protein meal with 0 additional seasoning required. The seasoning work is already done for you. Sitting quietly in a can, most people treat as a minor extra instead of core stock. Watch multi-packs versus single cans. Multi-packs vanish first because bulk shoppers already figured out the trick everyone else is about to learn the hard way. A household can have plenty of plain meat and nothing left to season it with, and that gap is exactly what this can fill. Keep a rotating multi-pack specifically as flavor insurance. That is about speed and flavor. The next item is something almost nobody expects to find inside a can at all. Number 3. Canned bacon. Most shoppers have never seen bacon in a can. Fewer still know its claimed shelf life beats Keystone's own guarantee outright. People assume bacon simply cannot be stored long-term, so they never even look for the canned version, and they lose the fat and flavor boost it could be giving every other brand can already sitting on their shelf. A small can holds dozens of pre-cooked slices and is marketed with a shelf life claim well beyond typical grocery canned meat, roughly double what Keystone itself guarantees. Bacon that outlasts almost everything else in the pantry. It is not sold anywhere near the regular meat aisle, so most shoppers never stumble onto it by accident the way they would a corned beef can. A pantry full of bland stored meals with no fat or smoky flavor to make any of them satisfying is a very specific kind of miserable. Watch specialty and prepper sections online rather than your regular grocery shelf. Buy a small amount specifically as a flavor multiplier, not as a primary protein. The rarest, priciest item on this list turns out to be one of the most durable, which proves price and shelf life do not always move together. If a specialty can outlast Keystone, the next item proves a completely ordinary bird can do something almost nobody expects. Number 2. Canned whole chicken. Most people already have canned chunk chicken in the pantry and have never once considered that an entire bone-in bird can be canned the exact same way. Shoppers cap their idea of canned meat at small processed pieces, never realizing this format exists at all, functioning like a shelf-stable rotisserie chicken that never needed a refrigerator. A single can hold most of a whole cooked chicken, bone-in, ready to shred straight into a meal with none of the prep work a fresh bird demands. A whole rotisserie chicken that never needed a refrigerator is not something most people think a can do, which is exactly why it is worth mentioning. It simply does not occur to most shoppers that this format exists in canned form at all. Watch specialty online retailers and preparedness suppliers, since regular grocery stores rarely carry this one. A household craving a real chicken dinner with nothing fresh on hand, and no idea this option even existed, is missing an easy fix, sitting one search away. The format most people never try is often the one closest to an actual home-cooked meal. Keep one or two on hand as an occasional real meal replacement, not a daily stock item. That is the format almost nobody tries. Number 1 is the product that does exactly what Keystone does, for a fraction of the price, sitting in plain sight the whole time. Number 1. Independent canned ground beef. Here is the question this whole list has been building toward. Is there anything that does what Keystone's signature product does, for less? There is, and it has been sitting one shelf over the entire time. Shoppers assume Keystone is the only source for shelf-stable ground beef, and never bother checking whether smaller or independent canneries make the same style of product. Raw ground beef at the meat counter can run close to $5 a pound. A comparable independently canned, no water-added ground beef product can meet a similar multi-year shelf claim for meaningfully less than Keystone's own shelf price per pound. Same format, same core function, meat and salt, no water added, a long shelf claim, lower price, almost no brand recognition. Brand recognition, not product quality, drives most of that price gap. Smaller canneries rarely get the shelf space or the marketing budget to compete on visibility, even when the can inside is doing the same job. Watch specialty butcher shops, regional canneries, and online preparedness suppliers rather than the national chain shelf, because that is where this one is actually sitting. A shopper paying a premium for a name, when a nearly identical process is available from a smaller producer for less, is paying for a logo, not a better can. The biggest canned meat name on the shelf is not the only company that figured out how to can real ground beef. It is just the one with the best marketing team. Compare ingredient lists directly, meat and salt, nothing else. Compare shelf life claims directly. Do that before you pay the premium price out of habit. 14 cans, one pattern. The process is what keeps food good for years, not the logo on the label. So here is what all 14 of these actually add up to. Leanness without fat fails at flavor. Protein without a meal base fails at effort on a tired night. Price without protein density fails at real value once you do the math. And brand name without an ingredient comparison quietly fails your budget every single trip. On your next 3 grocery trips, pick one item from 3 different roles on this list. A protein, a fat source, and a flexible meal base. Compare the ingredient list and the shelf life claim directly against Keystone before you decide what actually belongs in long-term storage. Check the format before you check the price. Buy what your household will actually eat, then rotate it before you forget it is there. Shelf stability comes from the can, not the logo. The smartest move in this whole aisle is checking the ingredients and the claim, not just reaching for the name you already recognize. Which of these have you actually tried? And which canned meat in your own pantry turned out to be better or worse than you expected? Tell me in the comments.